pals, I'm here today to talk about my summer TBR. So, the previous video I did was a summer reads recommendations video, I'll link that above, and I mentioned that I had sort of some books I was thinking about reading during the summer, and I also asked for some more recommendations from you and got some. So yeah, I decided to do a TBR and talk about them all here. I have 20 books. I wanted to limit it to 12 because I figured like 4 a month seems reasonable, but I've decided to just go big or go home and pick 20, and the likelihood of me reading all 20 is low, although it would feel like a massive achievement, so I will aim for that. So yeah, I've got a nice mix here of books that you recommended, books that I will listen to on audio. I've got a few books from the library, so I've got some of these books physically, some of them I haven't got yet because I'm going to buy them, borrow them, audio them, so I will put pictures up. So the first two I'm going to mention more briefly because I have shown you them before because they're books from the library. The first one is a short story collection called Milk, Blood, Heat by Dantiel W. Moniz. I'm not sure if that's how you say the author's name, apologies. I've heard amazing things about this one. I'm pretty much including it because I really want to read it soon because it sounds brilliant, and also it's set in Florida, so like Florida's warm most of the time I think, isn't it? So even if some of these aren't set in the summer, I think it will still have like fairly warm temperatures. Correct me if you live in Florida and I'm completely wrong. So yeah, this one sounds amazing, very much looking forward to it, and like I said, I've heard excellent things about it. The next one is The Underneath by Melanie. I spoke about this one quite a few months ago, which is embarrassing because I still have it out from the library and I still haven't read it. I've lost track of the amount of times I've renewed this one. I always feel bad about that because it's not sitting on the shelves at the library, and if it was, people would like browse and maybe pick it up, and instead it's just like collecting dust on my shelf. So I really need to prioritise this one and a few other library books actually that I've had for a while. I love the sound of this, but I've not really heard anyone talk about it, so I think because of that reason I'm not like prompted to pick it up. But I do want to try like Melanie Finn as an author in general. She is a South African author. This is set in a rented farmhouse in the summer in rural Vermont, and we're following this woman who's struggling with remembering traumatic events of her past in South Africa. And her husband goes away and leaves her raising the children there, and she's like struggling, and she starts to find things in the house that make her think something awful happened to the previous occupants, and like nobody will tell her what's happening. And she then gets involved with this man who's like some sort of drug dealer, and like shit kicks off. It says, "The Underneath is a tense, intelligent, beautifully written thriller which is also a considered exploration of violence, both personal and national, and whether it can ever be justified." I think that sounds super intriguing, so really want to, I think this could be like a book I could just binge read in like a day or two, so want to get to this one. And then I have a couple of library books I have not spoken about before. The first one both of these actually I requested, and I think I'm the first person to borrow them. This one is Yerba, Buena by LaCour. I've read 3 of her YA books and really enjoyed them. I don't read a lot of YA, but she's definitely one of my favourite YA writers, and this is her first adult novel. And this follows 2 women. This is set in California, so I figured that would be like a nice summer read, and also this is going to be like a quicker read for me. This is like a romance, I think, so I'll speed through it, and I like speeding through books more in the summer months. So yeah, this is set in LA. One of the women is a sought after bartender renowned for her brilliant cocktails, and then another woman is in her 7th year and 5th major as an undergraduate, and she takes a whim arranging flowers at the glamorous restaurant Yerba Buena and starts an affair with the married owner, and these 2 women like come across one another, and it's about this love affair they have. So yeah, sounds beautiful, love the cover. I think that could be a super quick read. This next book from the library I ummed and ahed about keeping on this TBR for a couple of reasons. I think the cover is like quite summery in colour. It also mentions the summer in the blurb, but it's a split narrative, so I was like, oh, like a bit in the past is set in the summer, so it might not be very summer focused. But then I had a little flick through and noticed that a bit set in like the present said it was Midsummer's Eve, so I think this is going to be a summer read. And I also, like I said, like to put books that I think I'll read more quickly on my summer TBR, and this is a thriller, so I think I will read it more quickly. And that is We Know You Remember by Tove Alsterdal. This was translated from the Swedish by Alice Menzies. I really like this cover, and I don't read enough sort of police procedurals, mysteries, thrillers, and when I find one I enjoy, I really enjoy them. So I think this one sounds intriguing. One summer a young girl went missing and I think was found murdered, and a local boy said he'd like committed the crime. The records were sealed, and now 20 years later, someone who they think killed her has come back, and I think has like started killing people again, and they've realised that like the person who was originally convicted perhaps wasn't guilty, and we're following this police detective as she's trying to unravel this mystery. I really like the idea of there being this quite small community and this crime having affected them for like 2 decades, it says, and what it would feel like to have that all reopened and everyone start to suspect one another. So hoping this is a really good one. Then I have one book off my like pre-2021 TBR. This book I've actually probably had for at least 5 years and haven't picked it up, even though I've been convinced since I bought it that I would absolutely love it. I have no excuse. And that is Family Roundabout by Richmal Crompton. This is of course a Persephone edition. It has lovely little carousels for the end papers. I don't know how well you can see that. And this is, well, a couple of reasons I've decided to pick this one up. I really enjoy reading novels that are sort of set in the interwar periods in Britain. I love reading them at any time of year, but for some reason I particularly enjoy reading them in the summer. This is about a family who I think live in London, and you're following the 2 matriarchs of these families who sort of are in charge of their families basically and have massive effects, and it's about these 2 families colliding and what happens between them, which I love the sound of. And I actually read the first couple of pages of this a few days ago, and it opens on the 1st of August. She's in like a deck chair in her garden, and I was like, yeah, this is definitely suited to the summer. So hoping to love this one. I've got 3 other Persephone books. I've put myself on a ban. So many Persephone books I want to read, but I've had these 4 books for years, and I'm not allowed to pick up others if I still haven't read those. So I want to get through these 4 this year, and then next year I will let myself pick up some more. But I feel like this could be a 5-star read, but we shall see. Then I have a few books that aren't set in the summer, but they're set in like warm countries, so I feel like that sort of leans into summer reading as well. This is another one I'm convinced could be a 5-star read, another family drama, and that is The Arsonist by Hala, Alyan. I am going to audio this one and read along because it has several different audio narrators. I've heard amazing things about the audio, but I think it's so beautifully written. I also want to like see the words on the page. So this is set in, where is it set? In Beirut. So they have an ancestral home in Beirut, and the whole family are called back there because I think someone dies and they have to decide what they're going to do with the house. And the family are spread across the globe in Beirut, Brooklyn, Austin and the Californian desert. They have a Syrian mother, a Lebanese father and 3 American children. And yeah, it brings them all together, and it's like if it's going to unite them or tear them apart as they're just like trying to decide what to do with this house. I absolutely love family dramas. I'd say they're like my #1 favourite like plot thing in books and films and TV, to be honest. And I've been looking through the books I've read this year and I just haven't read enough of them, so really want to read this one ASAP, and feel free to recommend me more family dramas that you think I would enjoy. The next one is another one I'm picking up just because it's like set in a warm location, and that is Florida again, and the book is The Between by Tananarive Due. I think that's how you say it. Do you? I don't know. In my accent we don't pronounce U's very well, so like we say like music, tuna. So I really struggle when an author's name is like that because I'm like, should I say do or Jew? But I can't really do either very well. Anyway, that was an aside. So this is a horror novel, so you might be thinking, why are you not reading in October? Well, I bought it recently and I try not to let books linger on my shelves for too long, so I don't want to leave it till October. And also, yeah, set in Florida, I feel like the colours look a bit summery. I don't know. This is about a man who becomes convinced that he's being like stalked, but in his nightmares, and it says here the line between like fantasy and real life starts to dissolve, and he starts to like lose his mind, and he becomes obsessed with the idea that someone is stalking his family and that he needs to protect them. And yeah, I've heard great things about all of her novels. She writes horror novels. I think all of her novels are horror, and this is the one I saw in my local bookshop, so very excited to give that one a go. Another one, I have no idea if this is really summery, and part of it is set in Tuscany and the cover looks very summery, so let me know if you've read this one, and that is Still Life by Sarah Winman. I was in Waterstones the other day, which was very naughty of me, I shouldn't have been, and this was on like a buy one get one half price, so I was like, do you know what, I should read it. Now it's a weird one because I read a couple of Sarah Winman novels. Oh great, there's no list. Oh, there is. Yes. So So I loved Tin Man, which I know loads of people did, but then I read When God Was a Rabbit and was like really disappointed by it. And I haven't read her other book, which is The Year of Marvellous Ways. It sounded a little bit twee, so I was like, do I love her as an author or do I not? And because of that, when this came out as a new release like last year, I didn't rush to pick it up. I didn't really love the sound of the premise either, so I was like, I'm going to wait. But I've heard really great things about it. It looks quite summery. And when I picked it up again in the bookshop and read the blurb and read the first couple of pages, I was like, actually, I think there's a chance I could really enjoy this. Again, this is set, so 1944, 2 women are in a Tuscan villa as bombs fall around them, and then we're following a young British soldier and a 64-year-old woman who's an art historian. And I think it's about like how they all become entangled. I love books set during this period, and yeah, I just thought the cover looked a little bit summery, and I feel like it could be like a really easy book to binge read because I find her writing like super readable and easy to get through. So let me know if you read this and if you enjoyed it, and also if you think it is like an appropriate summer read. And then I have a couple of books that you guys recommended. I already read one of them, so I will just briefly mention it here. A couple of you recommended Instructions for a Heatwave by Maggie O'Farrell. I was going on a trip to London for a couple of days at the weekend. It was going to be hot, and I was like, do you know what, it's set in London, it's hot, I'm going to take it with me. So I've already read it, so thank you for that recommendation. I will talk about that in my June reading wrap up. But a couple that you recommended that I haven't already read. One is Hot Milk by Deborah Levy. I haven't read any of her books and I've always intended to. And I knew this book was like set in the summer because I always remember the cover looks like super summery. And what I remembered of this book is that it's about a mother and daughter who go on holiday, like somewhere really hot. And yeah, like it sounded a bit mysterious. I've just looked up the plot and I feel like perhaps this may sit a little bit too close to home. So yeah, but I think I'll still give it a go. So this is about a young woman who has spent much of her life trying to solve the mystery of her mother's unexplainable illness. She's frustrated with her mother and her constant complaints, so they go to meet this doctor in southern Spain, and it says he has strange methods that seem to have little to do with physical medicine, and everything starts to become a bit weird. Now, I think the mother's condition is to do with certain parts of her body being paralysed, but I was diagnosed with something called functional neurological disorder a couple of years ago after I was off work for about 6 months in quite a significant amount of pain, unexplainable pain, and the doctors did loads of tests and they thought it might be multiple sclerosis, like all the symptoms pointed in that direction, which was obviously a bit of a shock, like to feel completely healthy and have all these symptoms just come out of the blue. But in the end, I had all the checks and it turned out like physically there was nothing wrong with my body. Functional neurological disorder is a condition in which your body causes this like symptoms of physical pain. So what you feel is true, you are feeling it, but your brain is sending incorrect signals. There's no actual reason for these things to be happening. So my symptoms were, like I said, a significant amount of pain. I had really bad tremors and pins and needles, and I'd get numbness and weakness in certain limbs and various other things. And it's under control now. I still always have a degree of pins and needles every day, but it's nowhere near as bad as it was, and I can sort of lead a normal life with, you know, there's blips where it's worse and I have to cancel plans, but it's much better than it was. And it just sounds a little bit like what the mother may have. It's functional neurological disorder, so don't know how well. Yeah, I read Writers and Lovers by Lily King around the time of having some of my worst symptoms, and she had some symptoms that sounded a bit similar, and I found it quite a difficult read. But we shall see. Let me know if you've read this book, and if you think, I don't know, if you have any similar sort of experiences to me, whether you think I should read it or not. So there's that one. The other one that you've recommended, which I'm definitely going to buy a physical copy of because I've seen some beautiful copies, is The Talented Mr. Ripley by Patricia Highsmith. I've only read one book by her, which is Carol or The Price of Salt, whatever you want to call it, after watching and loving the film Carol. And yeah, I've always meant to, I've got a bit of fluff on the end of my nose, I've always meant to read this book and haven't. And my understanding is this is about a man called Mr. Ripley who sort of gets involved in the lives of lots of wealthy people in Manhattan. And then for some reason, I think he's sent to like Italy or somewhere to try and bring somebody back. And I think shit gets a bit weird and mysterious. I've always understood he's like a sort of dark, unlikable character. So I've really wanted to read this for ages. And as soon as somebody mentioned it, and I was like, oh yeah, that does sound quite summery actually, I was like, definitely have to pick it up. Then I have a few books lined up in audio. One is The Dance Tree by Kiran, Millwood, Hargrave. This has just come out in the last few weeks. This is set in Strasbourg in the boiling hot summer of 1518, when a plague strikes the women of the city. Then basically one lone woman starts dancing in the square and doesn't stop, and then she's joined by more and more people. This is like a real event that happened, and all these people were just like dancing to their deaths because of exhaustion. And we're following a group of characters and watching like the effects of that event on them. I haven't read any of Kiran Millwood Hargrave's adult novels. I've read one of her children's and one of her YA, but I really like the sound of her previous adult historical fiction, which I will definitely read this year, but that sounds like more of like an autumnal read. This one very much sounds like a summer read, so I cannot wait to get to that one. Then of course I had to put some coming of age novels on here because it's like my bread and butter. One I've heard a couple of people talk about and say they really enjoyed is Mary Jane by Jessica Anya Blau. Is that how you say it? I don't know. And yeah, I've tried the audiobook out of this, on Scribd, and really like the narrator. So this is set in 1970s Baltimore. We're following a 14-year-old girl called Mary Jane, and she gets a job working for this family, and realises that actually, I think the people who work there, he's a doctor, like a psychiatrist, and she starts to see all these, I think like famous couples go to visit him, but she's not allowed to like talk about it outside the house. And it says it may look respectable on the outside, but on the inside the house is like chaotic. And yeah, it's like this coming of age story as she sort of goes home to this house with like really crisply ironed clothes and like schedules. And then when she's at work, this family who are just like chaotic and free and just different to everything she knows. So yeah, I really like the sound of that one. Then another one that I've wanted to read for ages, and again I have lined up on audio, is Bruny by Heather Rose. So this is set in Tasmania, hence me picking it for the summer read, because I don't think this is set in summer, but obviously in a hot country. So it says that a bomb goes off in remote Tasmania and Astrid Coleman agrees to return home to help her brother before an upcoming election. But this is no simple task. Her brother and sister are on either side of politics, the community is full of conspiracy theories, and her father is quoting Shakespeare. Only on Bruny does the world seem sane, until Astrid discovers how far the government is willing to go. Bruny is a searing, submersive, brilliant novel about family, love, loyalty, and the new world order. So yeah, I just have a feeling I could really enjoy this one. I've only heard a couple of people talk about it, but I heard them talk about it really highly, so very excited for that one. Then another Australian novel is Too Much Lip by Melissa Lucashenko. I've intended to read her books for a while now, and she's a really celebrated Aboriginal author. And it says this is a dark and funny new novel. We follow wisecracking's Kerry Salter. She's part of an Aboriginal family living on the mid-north coast of New South Wales. She has spent a lifetime avoiding two things, her hometown and prison, but now her pop is dying and she's an inch away from the lockup, so she heads south on a stolen Harley. She plans to be there for 24 hours tops, but then when she gets there, like, she just gets drawn back in to all of the family drama and like shenanigans, and this sounds like it's going to be quite dark but also hilarious, which is a blend I really enjoy, so can't wait to listen to this one. A book I heard people rave about, I think a couple of years ago now, and I've had on audio for that long and haven't listened to it yet, is Love After Love by Ingrid Persaud. This is a split narrative, which is something I really enjoy. So this is set in Trinidad. This woman is widowed and she's raising her son, and they become really friendly with a local man called Mr. Cheetan, and he helps to raise her son. And it says, one fateful night, Solo, who is the son, overhears his mother confiding in Mr. Cheetan and learns a secret that plunges him into torment. He flees Trinidad for New York, and then it's like a split narrative as you follow the mother and her friend back in Trinidad and the son in New York. It says, Love After Love interrogates love and family in all its myriad meanings and forms, asking how we might exchange an illusory love for one that is truly fulfilling. And I've just heard beautiful things about this, so Cannot wait to listen to it. And then we have Celestial Bodies by Jokha Al-Hati. I think this may have been on like the International Booker a few years ago, and this was translated by Marilyn Booth. Again, I have this one lined up on audio. This just sounds like the sort of novel I would adore. This is set in a small village in Oman, and we encounter 3 sisters, one who marries after a heartbreak, another who marries after a sense of duty, and a third who chooses to refuse all offers and await a reunion with the man she loves, who has emigrated to Canada. It says we follow these 3 women and their families, their losses and loves, that unspool beautifully against the backdrop of a rapidly changing Oman, a country evolving from a traditional slave-owning society into its complex present. And through these 3 sisters, we glimpse a society in all of its degrees. I love novels that follow like a group of women in particular. I think sisters are really interesting to follow, and like the different paths they take in their lives. So can't wait to listen to that one. And then we have another coming of age story, and that is The Enlightenment of the Green Gage Tree by Shukafa Azar, translated by Adrian Kajek. Again, I think this may have been on the International Booker. I heard loads of people talk about it, and I feel like that was probably why. This is set in Iran during the period after the Islamic Revolution in 1979. It says this is like a bit magical realism. It draws on classical Persian storytelling, and we follow this young girl as she like lives through this time period. And I've had loads of people say it's really beautiful and like sad, and so yeah, really hoping to enjoy this one. I love coming of age novels in particular when they're set during like a significant historical period. I think for children coming of age in really difficult, tumultuous periods for their countries, it entirely shapes who they'll grow up to be, so very interested in that one. Okay, so we've made it to the final 3, which I'm very happy about. I feel like I'm going to have insane cramp in my legs when I stand up. So the first one, the reason these are all at the end is because these are books I'm planning to buy, but I haven't yet because they're only just come out. The first one is The Perfect Golden Circle by Benjamin Myers. I just listened to and absolutely freaking adored The Offing by this author. And I considered audiobooking this one as well, but I had a little listen to the sample and I was like, I like his voice, but like not enough to not read this physically. And he wrote so beautiful that I would quite like to see the words on the page. This is set in the summer of 1989 in rural England. It says the tail end of a long decade of mass unemployment, class war and rebellion, and the continued destruction of the English countryside. That is like a whole sentence of just absolute ticks for me. I'm fascinated by all those things. We follow 2 men. One is a traumatised ex-soldier and the other is affable and chaotic Redbone. And they set out every night in an old, like beaten up camper van to make crop circles. And everybody's like, what the fuck, like where are these crop circles coming from? And it says, as the summer wears on and their designs grow ever more ambitious, the 2 men find that their work has become a cult international sensation, and that an unlikely and beautiful friendship has taken root as the wheat ripens from green to gold. Even that is a beautiful sentence, so literally cannot wait for this. Feel like it could be a book of the year. It sounds wonderful. And then a couple of months ago, I guess, I was having a look at all the romance books that were coming out this year, and I picked out a few that I thought sounded really interesting. And one in particular I thought I'd mention here is On Rotation by Shirlene Abiobi. This doesn't really sound that summery, however, I just really want to read it. I know I'm going to read it quite soon in the summer, and like I really like reading, like I said, fast moving, pacey books, and romance is definitely that for me. So we're following a Ghanaian American woman who's checked off all the boxes for the perfect immigrant daughter. She's undergoing medical training, she has a boyfriend with a successful career, and she's surrounded by lots of like loyal and successful friends. Everything goes to shit, boyfriend dumps her, she fails a massive medical exam, and her best friend starts to like distance herself. She's like, what the actual fuck, like what's happening to my life, everything's falling to shit. She realises that all the men she falls for like don't love her as much as she loves them, and she starts to like just question everything about her life. And then this like new man comes on the scene who doesn't fulfil any of the like tick boxes that her parents expect of the men she dates, and she falls for him anyway. And it's about like her navigating all of that at the same time as like all these big changes in her life. I think that sounds wonderful. I've recently watched This Is Going to Hurt, which was a book by Adam Kay. And I didn't read the book or any of those sort of medical books because I am a bit, what's the word? Basically cannot fucking stand having like an injection or anything like that. Would be the worst person for you to call if like you had some sort of wound and you needed help with it, like would not be good. But for some reason, I've realised I'm absolutely fine with like watching stuff like cesareans and stuff. So yeah, I was fine with watching it, and it made me like really even more fascinated by just the medical world. And yeah, I want to like try and watch some of these documentaries that are about like working for the NHS and stuff, and read more of those books. So feel free to recommend them down below. But then when I heard that this book was like set in like a medical setting, I was like, do you know what? I want to read this soon, it sounds really good. And then lastly, I had this book on my like, possible pre-order list, but was a bit unsure because it sounded like it might be a little bit too happy for me. And I saw it the other day in Waterstones and read the first couple of pages and really liked it. So I was like, do you know what, fuck it. Maybe I should read a few more like cheerful and happy books. And that is Dele Weds Destiny by Tomi Abaro. So I'm going to pick this one up. It said, this is the story of 3 once inseparable college friends in Nigeria who reunite in Lagos for the first time in 30 years. A sparkling debut novel about mothers and daughters, culture and class, sex and love, and the extraordinary resilience of female friendship. I really like the sound of this because these women are obviously like slightly older, I guess maybe in their like 50s, and it sounds like it's just going to be really heartwarming and happy and funny. And again, I love novels that comment on like the different paths that women have available to them, and perhaps things they wish that they'd done that other women did, or vice versa. So I think I'm going to really enjoy this one, and it has a lovely cover. So yeah, those are my 20 books. Sorry that took absolutely forever. I could have added loads more books, and actually you recommended me loads more summer reads that I definitely want to get to at some point, but obviously this list could not be, you know, really insanely long, so I just wouldn't manage them. So I've added them to my list, and I will definitely try and prioritise them like next summer. So do not worry. If I haven't mentioned the ones you recommended, I've definitely taken note of them and will read them at some point. So yeah, thanks so much for watching. Let me know if you read any of these, what you thought of them, and also please let me know if you have a summer TBR, if any of these books are on it, and what other books are on it, because I would love to know. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!